The red warning light blinked steadily on the control panel as Dr. Kalin reviewed the latest planetary survey data. His 6 eyes moved across the holographic display while his colleague Dr. Thess worked at the neighboring station. The information streaming across their screens made both scientists uncomfortable. "This cannot be correct," Kalin muttered, adjusting the data parameters for the 3rd time. "The readings from Sol 3 are beyond anything we have cataloged." Thess looked up from her own analysis. Her blue-scaled face showed deep concern as she pulled up the atmospheric composition readings. The oxygen levels alone would be lethal to most species. 21% oxygen content creates a highly corrosive environment. Most civilized worlds maintain oxygen at 7% maximum. The planetary data continued to scroll past their eyes. Sol 3 showed gravity readings that were 30% higher than galactic standard. The atmospheric pressure fluctuated wildly across the planet's surface. Temperature readings ranged from -40 degrees in some regions to over 50 degrees in others. The electromagnetic radiation from the local star bombarded the planet's surface with deadly energy. "Look at these weather patterns," Kalin said, highlighting a section of the display. "Rotating storm systems with wind speeds exceeding 200 kilometers per hour. Precipitation that falls as frozen water projectiles. Electrical discharges. That could power a small city." Thess shuddered as she reviewed the geological data. Active volcanic regions across multiple continents. Seismic activity that regularly measures above magnitude 7 on the standard scale. Oceanic trenches that extend to depths where the pressure would crush our strongest vessels. The biological surveys were even more disturbing. The planet teemed with life forms that defied all known parameters for survival. Massive predators with crushing jaw strength roamed the land masses. Microscopic organisms capable of dissolving organic matter existed in every water source. Plant life that could strangle or poison anything that approached grew in abundance. How does any complex life survive in such conditions? Thess asked, reviewing the data on what appeared to be the planet's dominant species. Kalin pulled up the preliminary scans of the bipedal creatures that seemed to have developed technology. These beings show signs of tool use and primitive construction, but their physical structure seems inadequate for survival on such a hostile world. The creatures appeared fragile by galactic standards. Their skin was thin and permeable. Their limbs were slender and seemed poorly adapted for the planet's crushing gravity. They lacked natural armor, fangs, or claws that would be expected from Deathworld survivors. "Perhaps they evolved in underground cave systems," Thess suggested. "Deep enough to avoid the worst of the surface conditions." Kalin nodded but remained puzzled. Even underground, they would face the geological instability. The seismic activity alone would make any permanent settlements impossible. The 2 scientists worked through the night, cross-referencing the data with established survival parameters. Every calculation pointed to the same conclusion. Sol 3 was a Class 12 death world, the most hostile category in their classification system. "We need to alert the Galactic Council," Kalin finally announced. "Any species capable of surviving these conditions must be considered extremely dangerous." Thess agreed, beginning to compile their report. The evolutionary pressures alone would create beings of incredible resilience. Their bone density would need to be 3 times normal to function under that gravity. Their immune systems would have to be virtually indestructible to handle the pathogen-rich environment. As they prepared their official classification, both scientists felt a chill of fear. The universe was vast and full of unknown dangers, but they had never encountered anything like Sol 3. The planet was a cosmic horror story made real. What kind of monsters could evolve in such conditions? Thess wondered aloud. Kalin submitted their report to the Galactic Database with a priority. Classification. The official designation read, Sol 3 classified as Class 12 Death World, quarantine protocols recommended. Any species surviving these conditions must be considered extremely hazardous to galactic civilization. The report included detailed recommendations for complete isolation of the Sol system. No trade vessels should approach within 10 light years of the system. No exploration missions should be authorized. No communication attempts should be made with any inhabitants. The risk is simply too great, Kalin wrote in his final summary. The evolutionary adaptations required for survival on Sol 3 would create beings far beyond normal physical parameters. Their strength, endurance, and resistance to environmental hazards would make them a threat to any peaceful species. Within hours, the report had been distributed throughout the galactic community. Warning beacons were placed at the edge of the Sol system. Navigation charts were updated to show the system as a restricted zone. The Death World designation became official. Dr. Kalin filed his final note that evening. Sol 3 inhabitants, if they exist, must be avoided at all costs. The planet's hostile conditions would forge beings of terrible capability. We must hope they never develop space travel. The red warning light continued to blink on the control panel as both scientists left their laboratory. Neither could shake the feeling that they had just cataloged something that would change the galaxy forever. In the depths of space, automated warning buoys began broadcasting their message to any vessel that might approach. Danger. Death World system, authorized personnel only. Quarantine in effect. The classification was complete. Sol 3 was officially the most dangerous planet in known space. The galactic community could sleep safely knowing that the horrors of the Death World were contained by the vast emptiness of space. No one imagined that the real surprise was yet to come. The emergency alarm echoed through the corridors of the Galactic Council headquarters as Ambassador Prime Jorth rushed to the communication center. 3 years had passed since the Sol 3 classification, and the Death World had been safely quarantined. No one expected what happened next. "Sir, you need to see this immediately," Communications Officer Nix said, her voice shaking as she handed over the datapad. "We received a transmission from the Sol system." Jorth's forearms trembled as he read the message. The words were simple but terrifying. "Greetings from Earth. We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic relations with the galactic community." The message had been broadcast on standard galactic frequencies, indicating that the Death World inhabitants not only possessed advanced technology but had somehow learned galactic communication protocols. The implications were staggering. How did they get our communication codes? Jorth demanded, his usually calm demeanor cracking under the pressure. "Unknown, sir. But the signal came from a primitive chemical fuel rocket that somehow managed to breach their planet's atmosphere and reach interstellar space." Within an hour, every major leader in the galactic community had gathered in the emergency council chamber. Defense Minister Rask stood at the podium, his scaled face grim as he addressed the assembly. "The engineering alone defies explanation," he began. "To build any sophisticated technology while living under Class 12, Death World conditions suggest capabilities far beyond our understanding." Medical Chief Yenth added her own terrifying analysis. "Our projections indicate that any species surviving Sol 3 would possess physical capabilities that make them virtually indestructible. Their bone density would need to be 3 times our standard just to function under that gravity." The debate that followed was heated and desperate. Some council members advocated immediate military response, arguing that first contact should happen on their terms, far from the Death World. Others pushed for complete isolation, suggesting they simply ignore the transmission and hope the Death Worlders would lose interest. "We cannot ignore this," argued Science Minister Vorth. "If they have achieved interstellar communication, they will eventually develop faster-than-light travel. We must understand what we are dealing with." Defense Minister Rask disagreed strongly. Any species surviving those conditions would be built for war. Their immune systems would be virtually indestructible to biological weapons. Their physical strength would be overwhelming. We should prepare for invasion. The fear in the chamber was palpable. Representatives from dozens of species sat in stunned silence as they contemplated the implications. A Death World species had not only survived, but had reached out to make contact. "What do they want?" asked Trade Minister Kess, her voice barely above a whisper. "Perhaps they seek to conquer easier worlds," suggested military advisor Dren. after surviving the horrors of Sulfuri, our peaceful planets would seem like paradise. Easy targets for expansion. The transmission had been analyzed by the best cryptographers in the galaxy. The message was straightforward and contained no hidden codes or threats. The Deathworlders claimed to come in peace, but everyone knew that predators often appeared harmless before they struck. "We need more information," Ambassador Prime Jorth finally declared. "We will send a single diplomatic vessel to the edge of their system. One ship, maximum shields, ready to jump to hyperspace at the first sign of hostility." The decision sparked another round of debate. Who would volunteer for what was essentially a suicide mission? The crew would need to be expendable, but skilled, enough to gather intelligence about the Deathworld inhabitants. "I will go," announced Captain Dren, a seasoned military officer with experience in hostile environments. "My ship can handle the mission parameters." "The medical risks alone could kill you," Chief Yenth warned. "The radiation from their star, the gravitational stress, the unknown pathogens they might carry." Captain Dren nodded grimly. "The alternative is waiting for them to develop better technology and come to us. I would rather face them on our terms." The crew selection took several days. Volunteers were few, but those who stepped forward were among the best in their fields. Navigator Brix, Communications Officer Tal, and Medical Officer R.H. joined the mission despite knowing they might not return. "Remember," Ambassador Prime Jorth instructed during the final briefing, "your primary mission is intelligence gathering. We need to understand their capabilities, their numbers, and their intentions. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary." The diplomatic vessel Harmony's Edge was equipped with the most advanced sensors available. Its shields could withstand direct hits from military-grade weapons. Its engines were tuned for maximum speed, allowing for rapid escape if needed. As the ship departed from the galactic core, everyone understood that the next few days would determine the fate of civilized space. The Deathworld inhabitants had made first contact, and the galaxy would never be the same. "Communications array ready," reported Officer Tal as they approached the edge of the Sol system. "If they try to communicate, we will know immediately." "Captain." Dren stared at the tactical display showing the third planet from the local star. Somewhere on that hostile world lived beings who had not only survived impossible conditions, but had developed the technology to reach out to the stars. "All stations, prepare for contact," he announced. "We are about to meet the most dangerous species in known space." The sensor array aboard the Harmony's Edge came alive with readings that made no sense to the crew. Navigator Brix stared at her displays in confusion as thousands of signals appeared across the surface of the third planet. "This is impossible," she whispered, her scaled fingers dancing across the controls. "The electromagnetic signatures suggest a massive technological civilization." Captain Dren moved to her station, his expression growing more troubled with each passing moment. The Deathworld was not supposed to support this level of development. According to every model they had, survival alone should have consumed all available resources. "Are those cities?" Communications Officer Tal asked, pointing to the bright spots scattered across the planet's night side. "If they are, there are thousands of them," Brix replied. "The power consumption readings are off the charts. They are using more energy than most galactic civilizations." The first shock came when they realized the Deathworld inhabitants had not just survived their hostile planet but had completely transformed it. Artificial structures covered the landmasses. Lights blazed from every continent. Primitive spacecraft moved regularly between the planet and its oversized moon. "Captain, we have incoming communication," Tal announced suddenly. "They are broadcasting on multiple frequencies. The message is being translated now." The second shock was the content of the message. Instead of threats or demands, the Deathworlders were offering assistance. "Welcome to our solar system," came the translated voice. "We have been monitoring your approach. Do you require medical assistance or supplies?" Captain Dren felt his world shift. These were supposed to be the most dangerous beings in the galaxy, forged by the worst conditions imaginable. Yet their first concern was for the well-being of their visitors. "Sir, they are requesting permission to send a small delegation to meet us," Tal continued. "They emphasize that the meeting is purely diplomatic and that they come unarmed." The tactical officer, Lieutenant Arachin, shook his head in disbelief. "This has to be a trap. No species survives a Class 12 death world by being peaceful." Despite his training and instincts, Captain Dren found himself curious about these beings. The data they were collecting contradicted every assumption about Deathworld inhabitants. "Tell them we will meet with a small delegation. Maximum security protocols." The humans, as they called themselves, arrived in a small shuttle that looked almost primitive compared to galactic standards. The vessel was built from refined metals and powered by chemical combustion. Yet it had somehow crossed the void between their ships. Ambassador Tom Wilson was the first human to set foot aboard an alien vessel. He appeared impossibly fragile, with thin, pale skin and limbs that seemed barely adequate for his planet's crushing gravity. He wore a breathing apparatus that supplied him with his planet's toxic atmosphere mixture. "Thank you for coming all." "This way," Wilson said through the translation device, his voice warm and friendly. "We have been hoping to meet our galactic neighbors for quite some time." Captain Dren studied the human with growing confusion. This soft, elderly being was supposed to be a product of the most hostile world in known space. Where were the enhanced muscles needed to survive crushing gravity? Where were the thick scales required to resist radiation? Where were the natural weapons that evolution should have provided? "You are not what we expected," Captain Dren admitted carefully. Wilson smiled, showing flat teeth designed for grinding rather than tearing flesh. "We get that a lot. Please make yourselves comfortable. We have prepared a small presentation about our world." Dr. Lisa Chang, Earth's leading xenobiologist, joined the meeting with displays and data that completely reversed the galactic understanding of death worlds. Her appearance was even more surprising than Wilson's, small and delicate, with no obvious adaptations for survival. "I know our world seems hostile by galactic standards," she began, activating a holographic display. "But to us it is simply home. We have learned to work with our environment rather than against it." The presentation showed humans living in conditions that should have been instantly lethal. They had built cities in regions of extreme seismic activity. They had developed agriculture in areas where the soil was contaminated with heavy metals. They had created transportation systems that functioned despite temperature swings that would cripple most technology. "This settlement is built directly on an active fault line," Chang explained, highlighting a city of millions. "The buildings are designed to flex with seismic movement. When earthquakes occur, we simply repair any damage and continue." The galactic visitors watched in fascination as humans showed them recreational activities that defied all logic. They climbed mountains where the air was too thin to breathe. They swam in oceans filled with predators. They engaged in sports that seemed specifically designed to risk injury or death. "Your people do this for entertainment?" Lieutenant Arachin asked weakly. "The challenge is part of the fun," replied Dr. Chang. "We have always found that overcoming obstacles makes us stronger." The final shock came when the humans began describing their daily lives. They spoke casually about weather events that would force entire galactic civilizations to evacuate. They mentioned natural disasters the way other species might discuss minor inconveniences. "Last month, a hurricane passed through our eastern territories," Wilson mentioned during a discussion of infrastructure. "Wind speeds reached 250 kilometers per hour. We evacuated the coastal areas and rebuilt the damaged sections afterward." Captain Dren felt his understanding of the universe crumbling. These beings were not the super predators he had expected. They were not the armored warriors that should have evolved on a death world. They were something far more disturbing. They were people who had learned to treat the impossible as routine. "How do you maintain your sanity?" he asked, genuinely curious. Wilson looked puzzled by the question. "Why would we lose our sanity? This is the only world we have ever known. We make the best of it." As the meeting continued, Captain Dren realized that the galaxy had made a fundamental error in their classification of Sol 3. It was not that humans were dangerous because they were monsters. They were dangerous because they had learned to thrive in conditions that would destroy any other known species. The Death World had not created super predators. It had created the ultimate survivors. The cultural exchange facility orbiting Earth buzzed with activity as representatives from dozens of galactic species gathered to study the Death World inhabitants. Dr. Lisa Chang stood before a mixed audience of xenobiologists, engineers, and military analysts, all struggling to understand how humans had achieved the impossible. "We appreciate your interest in our world," Chang began, gesturing to the holographic displays surrounding the auditorium. "But I think there may be some misunderstandings about our capabilities." The audience leaned forward, expecting to hear about enhanced strength, superior reflexes, or advanced healing abilities. Instead, Chang activated a display showing human anatomy that revealed something far more disturbing. "We are actually quite fragile," she explained, highlighting the human skeletal structure. "Our bones break easily under stress. Our skin tears with minor pressure. Our organs can be damaged by impacts that would barely register to most galactic species." Engineer Mike Torres joined the presentation, his casual demeanor unsettling the military observers. "Our technology is not particularly advanced either. We still use chemical combustion for most of our power generation. Our computers are primitive by galactic standards. Our material science is centuries behind yours." The revelations continued to shatter every assumption about Death World inhabitants. Humans were not physically superior, technologically advanced, or naturally aggressive. They were, by any reasonable measure, poorly adapted for survival. "Then how do you survive?" asked Dr. Kalin, the scientist who had originally classified Earth as a death world. Chang smiled at the question. "We adapt. We learn. We refuse to give up." The presentation shifted to show human settlements around the globe. The galactic visitors watched in growing amazement as humans demonstrated their true capability, turning disaster into opportunity. "This city is built in a region that experiences regular volcanic activity," Torres explained, showing a thriving metropolis. "Instead of avoiding the area, we harvest the geothermal energy. The volcanic ash enriches our soil. The hot springs provide recreation and therapy. The humans showed them infrastructure that defied all engineering logic. Bridges that were designed to collapse safely during earthquakes and rebuild themselves. Buildings that could float during floods. Transportation systems that functioned in weather conditions that would shut down most civilizations. Your people live in areas where the atmospheric pressure changes by 30% seasonally," observed Chief Engineer Vorth. "How do you maintain structural integrity?" "We build everything to handle much worse conditions," Torres replied. "Our standard construction assumes that everything will go wrong at the worst possible time?" The medical presentation was equally revealing. Dr. Sarah Kim, Earth's leading trauma surgeon, showed the galactic visitors human medical technology that was centuries behind galactic standards but perfectly suited to their environment. "We have extensive experience with radiation exposure," she explained. "Our planet's magnetic field is weaker than galactic standards, so we receive constant bombardment from cosmic rays. Our medical procedures are designed around treating radiation damage." The psychological presentations were the most disturbing. Human psychiatrist Dr. Alex Moore explained how his species had learned to cope with constant environmental stress. "We do not see our world as hostile," he said. "We see it as challenging. The difference is fundamental to our psychology. A hostile environment is something to be avoided. A challenging environment is something to be overcome." The galactic visitors watched recordings of human children playing in conditions that would terrify adult members of most species. They saw humans celebrating in the aftermath of natural disasters. They observed humans seeking out dangerous situations for recreation. "Your people appear to enjoy risk," observed psychological analyst Thren. "We find that overcoming challenges makes us stronger," Moore replied. "Physical challenges build physical strength. Mental challenges build mental resilience." We actively seek out difficulties to improve ourselves. The engineering demonstrations were equally impressive. Human construction crews showed how they built structures designed to withstand conditions that would destroy most galactic architecture. Their buildings flexed with seismic activity, their vehicles functioned in extreme temperatures. Their infrastructure survived disasters that would cripple most civilizations. This transportation system operates in temperatures ranging from -40 to +60 degrees, Torres explained. The materials expand and contract significantly, but the system compensates automatically. The final presentation covered human space exploration. Astronaut Commander Lisa Park showed the galactic visitors how humans had learned to survive in the vacuum of space using primitive technology. Our life support systems are based on maintaining Earth's toxic atmosphere in a hostile environment, she explained. We have extensive experience with emergency procedures because equipment failure in space is usually fatal. The questions that followed revealed the fundamental disconnect between human and galactic thinking. Where other species saw impossibility, humans saw problems to be solved. Where other species saw danger, humans saw opportunities for growth. How do you maintain morale when facing constant threats? Asked Morale Officer Bren. We do not see them as threats, Park replied. We see them as the universe giving us interesting problems to solve. As the presentations concluded, the galactic visitors sat in stunned silence. They had come expecting to study super predators or advanced warriors. Instead, they had discovered something far more unsettling, a species that had learned to treat the impossible as routine. Your people are not what we expected, Dr. Kalin finally admitted. We know, Chang replied with a smile. We get that a lot. The implications were staggering. If humans could thrive in conditions that would destroy most species, what could they accomplish in more favorable environments? The galaxy was about to find out. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council Station had never hosted such an unusual diplomatic session. Ambassador Tom Wilson sat comfortably in his environmental suit, breathing Earth's toxic atmosphere while surrounded by representatives from 200 different species. The irony was not lost on anyone present. The human delegate has requested to address the council, announced Ambassador Prime Jorth, his voice carrying a mix of curiosity and nervousness that had become common when dealing with the Death World. Inhabitants. Wilson stood slowly, his movements careful in the station's light gravity that was barely a third of what he was accustomed to. Around him, beings that had evolved in paradise worlds watched with fascination as he functioned normally in what they considered debilitating conditions. Thank you for welcoming Earth into the galactic community, he began, his voice carrying through the translation systems. We understand that our planet's conditions are somewhat unusual by your standards. A ripple of nervous laughter passed through the assembly. Somewhat unusual was a considerable understatement when applied to a Class 12 Death World. We would like to contribute to galactic civilization, Wilson continued. Our experience with challenging environments has given us certain capabilities that might be useful. The real impact of human involvement in galactic affairs had become apparent within months of first contact. Problems that had plagued civilization for centuries were being solved by humans who treated them as routine challenges. Dr. Lisa Chang had established the first interstellar disaster response team, staffed entirely by humans who found working in hostile environments relaxing compared to their home planet. When a massive earthquake struck the mining colony on Kepler 442b, human rescue teams arrived within hours. The seismic activity was registering magnitude 8 on the galactic scale, reported Emergency Coordinator Beth Martinez. Local authorities had declared the situation hopeless. We had the trapped miners extracted and the facility operational again within 6 days. The psychological impact on the galactic community was profound. Species that had evacuated entire planets due to natural disasters watched humans rebuild infrastructure while the disasters were still occurring. Engineer Mike Torres had revolutionized galactic construction standards by applying human engineering principles to alien environments. His buildings could withstand conditions that would destroy conventional architecture. The key is not to fight the environment, he explained to a gathering of galactic engineers. You work with it. You assume everything will go wrong and design accordingly. You build systems that fail safely and recover quickly. The medical applications were equally revolutionary. Human doctors, accustomed to treating patients in toxic, high-radiation environments, found most galactic medical challenges surprisingly straightforward. Dr. Sarah Kim had established treatment protocols for radiation exposure that were saving thousands of lives across the galaxy. Her techniques, developed for surviving on Earth, were being adapted for use on space stations and industrial facilities. We have been dealing with cosmic radiation for our entire evolutionary history, she explained to the Galactic Medical Council. Our procedures are designed around the assumption that everyone has some level of radiation damage. The environmental applications were perhaps the most impressive. Human terraforming experts were transforming planets that had been considered uninhabitable by galactic standards. This world has surface temperatures that swing 40 degrees daily, explained terraforming specialist Robert Chun, gesturing to the holographic display of a planet that humans had volunteered to colonize. The atmospheric pressure is 60% above galactic standard. The soil chemistry is toxic to most plant life. The galactic observers watched in amazement as humans not only survived in these conditions but began to thrive. They established agriculture in contaminated soil. They built cities that functioned despite extreme weather. They created recreational facilities around natural hazards. Your people are treating this as a vacation destination, observed Planetary Development Minister Kess. The surfing conditions are excellent, Chan replied enthusiastically. The storms create waves that are perfect for extreme sports. The economic impact was equally significant. Human traders were establishing commerce routes through regions of space that other species avoided. They were mining asteroids and high radiation zones. They were harvesting resources from planets with toxic atmospheres. The profit margins are incredible, reported Trade Representative Ana Lopez. Most species will not work in these environments, so there is no competition. We can charge premium prices for materials that are common on Earth. The military applications were causing considerable debate among galactic defense forces. Human military advisors were developing strategies for operating in environments that would kill most soldiers. They are not superior warriors, explained defense analyst Commander Rusk. They are simply comfortable in conditions that would disable our forces. They can fight effectively in environments where we cannot survive. The cultural exchange programs were perhaps the most surprising development. Humans were establishing tourism operations that catered to species seeking authentic Deathworld experiences. We offer carefully controlled exposure to Earth-like conditions, explained Tourism Director Maria Santos. Visitors can experience mild versions of our weather, sample diluted versions of our atmosphere, and participate in supervised extreme sports. The waiting list for these programs extended for years. Species that had evolved in peaceful environments were fascinated by the idea of experiencing mild danger under controlled conditions. It is remarkably therapeutic, reported Dr. Psychological Wellness Specialist Varon. Exposure to manageable stress appears to improve mental health and resilience. The final presentation to the Galactic Council came from Earth Science Minister Dr. Jennifer Park. Her proposal was simple but revolutionary. Establish human colonies throughout the galaxy to serve as emergency response centers. We can live comfortably in environments that would kill most species, she explained. We can provide disaster relief, emergency medical care, and rescue operations in conditions where no one else can function. The proposal was approved unanimously. Within a year, human settlements were being established on worlds that had been abandoned due to environmental hazards. Mining operations were being restored on planets with toxic atmospheres. Scientific research was being conducted in regions of space that had been considered too dangerous to explore. The final irony was recorded in the updated classification of Sulfuri, the planet that had once been labeled as the most dangerous world. In known space was now classified as a Class I, Garden World. The new designation included a note that would become famous throughout the Galaxy. Previous classification error due to fundamental misunderstanding of baseline environmental standards. At the bottom of the file, someone had added an unofficial comment that captured the essence of the human impact on galactic civilization. They call their death world home and genuinely seem to enjoy living there. Recommend studying human psychology to understand how they maintain such positive attitudes under impossible conditions. The recommendation was approved, but the research teams found that the answer was surprisingly simple. Humans did not see their world as hostile. They saw it as the place where they belonged. The difference in perspective had changed everything. The galaxy was no longer the same. The arrival of the Death World inhabitants had taught everyone a fundamental lesson. The impossible was simply another word for something that had not been tried yet.